You've heard the term coaching on this show a lot, and you've heard from coaches on this show before, but what do you do when you need to hire a coach? Today, the roadmap to follow when hiring your own coach. This is Coaching for Leaders, episode 179.
Produced by Innovate Learning, maximizing human potential.
Greetings to you from Orange County, California. This is Coaching for Leaders, and I'm your host, Dave Stachowiak. This is a weekly show to help leaders improve their communication, strategy, coaching, productivity, and personal mastery. And there are many ways to do that professionally, and one of those ways is to actually seek out a coach, someone who has more experience than you do in those areas and also has the skill set to be able to work with you and to move you faster along than you would on your own. And I have received the question on a few occasions from our community or members of our community on, what do I do if I'm thinking about hiring a coach, or what are some of the things that I should consider? And I was really glad recently to get introduced to Marc Mawhinney. And Marc is also a podcast host, and he is the host of the show Natural Born Coaches. And on the show, he interviews successful coaches to get inside their heads and discover how they've built or improving and growing their coaching businesses. Now, I know we have coaches in our audience who listen to this show, and so it's great that we have a big part of the coaching community here as well. But we're going to actually take the opposite approach here today and look at something that I know will be valuable to many people in our community, which is, if you're thinking about hiring a coach, what are the kinds of things you should be thinking about and looking for and asking about? So, Marc, I'm so glad to welcome you to the show. Glad to have you.
Hi, Dave. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm really excited to talk with you because this is a question I've gotten a few times, and before we get into kind of some of the things that people should look at or think about when they're hiring a coach, maybe we should take even a step further back and have some conversation about why would someone want to hire a coach at all? What's the reason that you'd benefit from seeking out a coach?
Well, I think when it comes to coaches, obviously I'm a big believer in the industry and the value. So I think that everybody should have a coach, and particularly entrepreneurs, and a lot of people probably listen to your show. I found out the hard way why somebody needs a coach, because for a number of years I was building up a real estate business back throughout my 20s, and I built that up to about 100 employees and was rocking and rolling, and everything seemed fine. And I was always approached by people who were coaches wanting to work with me, and I thought, why the heck do I need a coach? I got everything handled here, and I don't need a coach, and just sort of just ignored them or politely decline their offers. And then I went through a business closure 5 or 6 years ago. And then suddenly it became clear to me, okay, you know what, I probably should have had a coach just to help me along with this, because I think I would have avoided a lot of the mistakes that I'd made. So I think coaches are important because they're really a second pair of eyes that can take a look at what you're doing with your business, or say with your life, if it's more of a life coaching focus on it. And they can help you make the decisions. It's not like a coach is coming in and saying, okay, do this, do that. And they're asking the right questions, and they're helping pull out answers that you really already have. It's just helping you get some clarity on that. So as said, I'm a huge believer in the need for coaches.
And you hit on something I've heard often too, which is coaches don't necessarily have the answers for you, but they have the ability and the training to ask the right questions to really help you to come to the point where you can answer the questions faster than you might if you were just thinking it through on your own.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion because, of course, you hear a lot of the terms being tossed around and put into the same bucket, like coaching and consulting and everything else. And there seems to be a lot of confusion there. It's not so much consulting where you've got somebody coming in and laying down the big binder and saying, this is what I think we should do. And, it's a little bit different approach. A good coach is really probably listening a lot more than they're talking. And from what I've heard from the coaches that come on, natural born coaches, is it can be anywhere for a 20-80 split. Maybe they're listening 20% of the time, 25% of the time, but they're never talking more than they're listening if they're doing it right.
Got it. And so when you think about, and actually it's interesting, Mark, because I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but before we even started recording, you mentioned, well, this is such a timely topic because you actually hired a coach today for a project.
About an hour ago.
Yeah, which is great. So
yes, you're I read your blog post there, what to know when you're hiring a coach, so it came in handy.
Oh, good. Awesome. Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. A couple of months ago, I did write a post on what to know when hiring a coach.
Yeah, that was an excellent post, by the way. So I was just going to read it verbatim, just word for word, and then you could just use that for the podcast.
Oh, perfect. We're done. So good. So you went through this thinking process even today yourself, being a coach, and you're hiring and reaching out to people to help you. What are some of the kinds of things that coaches can do? Like, what would be the events that would happen either in my business or as a leader that I might think to myself, this is the time that maybe I want to think about reaching out to someone that will be helpful to me and really provide some coaching that will get me along the way faster than I would on my own?
Well, I'll just give a really quick synopsis what happened today, because I think that's a useful example to tell people about. With my business here in 2015, one thing I have to get doing is webinars. I've been so busy in 2014 with the launch of the podcast, and it's a daily one, and trying to, keep ahead of that and on schedule and everything, that I just haven't had the time to learn properly with webinars. And it's something, what it's like when you should be doing something, but it gets put on the back burner, and you find other things that get bumped up ahead of it. So recently I said, I have to find somebody that knows how to properly do webinars for the best, make the most effective webinars, and to help guide me through that whole process. And so the last few weeks, I've been talking with a few people who I've come across, people who've been recommended, and just sort of getting a feel where to go forward with hiring someone to help me with the whole webinar process. And the person I chose today came highly recommended by a mutual contact. Actually, it was a guest that was on the podcast just recently. And after our interview, we just got chatting, and he mentioned he's got some webinars going on. And I said, oh, by the way, how did you handle the whole webinar thing? Because there's so much information out there. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. What did you do? And he said, I've got an awesome guy that can help you with this, that can coach you with it. And he connected up with us. We spoke today by Skype for an hour or so. He just gave tons of value. And at the end of the day, I went with my gut, because I thought, I've got this many notes and good things. I got a great feeling about this guy, that he's a real deal. He knows what he's talking about, and just everything gelled, and bang, an hour later he's hired, and we're ready to rock and roll with webinars. So it doesn't always happen that quickly. When you're choosing a coach, I'm not necessarily recommending that right on the spot after a few minutes talking to them that you're hiring the coach, but you should probably check around, talk to a few different people, get a feel for who's out there, see who you gel with, because you're going to have to work with this person, and you want to make sure that the energy's right and that you've got a good feeling about that, and then make your decision. So that's what happened with me today, and it's kind of funny that this all happened not too long before our chat.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things I think I'm interested in too, and I know our audience would be too, is even before you got to that point where you had that conversation today, how did you find someone? Like, is there a clearinghouse for this? Do you go on your personal network? Do you just send an email out? What's the way to kind of track down a coach? Because there's a lot of different websites out there and coaching organizations, but I think at the end of the day, a lot of times people don't know where to start when they get to this point. They're like, okay, I need somewhere to help. So where did you start, and what do you recommend for people when they're first come to that realization that they need some help in an area?
Yeah, well, I've actually I've done a number of different things to find coaches, because I've worked with coaches since becoming a quote coach. I have also gotten help from people, and some have worked out and some haven't worked out as well. Some people I've found by using that handy dandy website called Google and, simply typing in whatever I need and then starting that route. But I find as time's gone on, I've really depended more upon the personal referral and recommendation. Just where my network's getting pretty big, where I'm interviewing a successful coach every day, I'm getting time, good connection and relationship there with those guests. And then I'm getting time after our chat if I want to pick their brain on something quick and they're saying you really should talk to this person. The person I hired today actually doesn't have a flashy website, doesn't have a lot of those things that you would expect a coach to have. So you might be thinking, oh my gosh, why did you hire him or whatever? Well, I'm going on the recommendation of very successful coaches that I know that have used him. And I've actually been on one of their webinars and I really liked the way they did it. And they had the whole setup down pat. So it's important, I guess, to in some cases to check out the website and to see all that stuff. But I think you have to go on a little more than what somebody's putting up on their website.
Yeah, and that what a third party says is so much more credible and valuable than just what someone says on their own site. If there's a whether it's a referral or a journalist or an organization where that person's received something from, an award or certification, that third party check-in is really helpful. And I think it also speaks to, Marc, one of the things that I know you and I both value in when we hire a coach is a person's track record. And you mentioned that, just that this person's had a lot of success and they've been really helpful to other people in your network. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, when you're looking at track record, is that something that you consider strongly, and what kinds of things do you look at?
Definitely track record's important, but in today's day of social media, I think an important thing is to see what kind of value the person's putting out. And with that coach in particular that I mentioned, the webinar coach, the person that recommended him to me, one of the things he mentioned was I'm in a forum with him, and this guy just gave so much value to me before I even hired him. He just was constantly helping and being very helpful. And he gave so much that I knew I could just see the knowledge that he had and everything else. And he did this without expecting necessarily for me to hire him right away. So I knew that I had to hire him. And I think that's something that's important to look at. If you're dealing with a coach that's just constantly promoting, hire me, and then you don't see anything else, and what might be with not seeing anything with blog posts or videos or anything to get a feel for them, then it's really difficult to know if you should hire that coach or not. So I look for, with coaches, somebody that's giving value without first expecting something in return. I'll give you an example of a coach I hired early on in my coaching career to help me out with things. And he was a nice guy, not to bash him. I mean, we got along fine, but it just didn't work out. The strategies that he was helping me with, I wasn't getting traction, and I wasn't happy with the results. And one thing that kind of bugged me, though, before I even hired him was he was very, basically, to paraphrase, was don't talk to me unless you hire me, because I only help my clients. And it was over something that was a really simple question. I wasn't asking for a ton of time or anything else. It wasn't anything that should have been too intrusive. So that probably should have been a red flag that, okay, maybe I should hold off with this guy. My gut was just telling me maybe it's not the right fit, but it was just coming out of the gate. I was pretty green at that time, and I said, hey, let's go for it. Now, ironically, that same coach recently contacted me and wanted to work together again. And, I thought, we didn't get the results I wanted the first time around, and there were a few things that happened there I wasn't happy about. Now you're contacting me again because you want me to hire you. It just didn't make sense. So gut is very important when you're hiring a coach. Your instinct, just like business, it's very important. It's important when you're hiring a coach as well.
Well, that's key. And let's come back to that gut feeling, because I think that's a key thing that a lot of times is so important when hiring a coach. I want to highlight something you just said here a moment ago, which is, the world has so changed around this, Marc. It used to be, a generation ago, the marketing strategy for every organization was promote, and then, try to get people to get in the door. And that really has changed. The world now very much more so is the people out there who are really attracting great followings and who are really adding value to the world, and the brands and the organizations are really out there giving first. I mean, they're out there providing value. They're sharing information on social media. They're asking questions. They're doing podcasts. They're writing blogs. They're doing things that are really trying to be helpful in the world first. And that is really very much the thing that's working for a lot of organizations now. And the people who are doing kind of the old traditional methods are not finding as much success from that.
Yeah, well, can I give you a quick example?
Another
one from today, Dave. We picked a great day to do this podcast because I've got some things that have happened today that I think will be valuable to the audience. But one thing that I do with my Facebook page for Natural Born Coaches is every time somebody new likes that page, I'll send a personal message. It's nothing automated or anything. I'll send a message to thank them for liking the page. And I'm not sending that with, hey, thanks for liking the page. By the way, do you need a coach? Here's what I do, and start throwing all this stuff at them. I actually will send them a thank you. What do you do? Learn a little bit more about them. Is there anything I can do for you? Can I help you with anything? And that's what I did today with somebody there. And we had a great conversation. Actually, she asked me to come on to her podcast, which is in the next couple of weeks I'll be going on just from our conversation. And at the end of it, she said, Mark, I want to compliment you on your Facebook marketing strategy, basically. And I said, okay, why is that? And she said, well, I'm used to people when they're contacting me, reaching out, they're just salesy. And you've helped me. You've given me a couple suggestions here and offered to help and everything else. And you're not selling me right off the hop. And I think that's very important for anyone who, whether it be a coaching business or whatever business you have, is nowadays, you're right, you have to change that strategy. If you're in there as being all salesy, people are going to smell you a mile away and you're not going to have much luck. Work first to give them the value, and then it's going to come back to you one way or another.
And I bet you don't even really think about that as a Facebook marketing strategy. You're just like want to be helpful and get to know people, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not like I'm, it's some sort of big master plan. I want to thank people because there's a trillion or two pages on Facebook that they could like. So if somebody's coming on to Natural Born Coaches and they're liking it, I do appreciate them supporting it, and I appreciate when people share it and everything else. So for me, it's just sort of ingrained into me that, and it probably comes from years of being in real estate. I was always that way in terms of, back, I'm probably dating myself, but it was before the days of social media when you actually sent handwritten cards to people and things like that. It was a little different world at times. And I was just used to, thanking people for referrals and helping them out any way I could, connecting them with good people if it could help them one way or another. And I just enjoy being a connector with people that way. And I've always found that it'll come back one way or another. So it's a good way to do business.
I love it. I might steal that idea too for our Facebook site. Actually, thanks for the
that's $1,000.
Okay, send me your invoice.
Send it by PayPal.
Right, exactly. Let's come back to what you talked about a minute ago, which was gut. And you and I both hit on the same thing when we've thought about this topic of hiring a coach. And I had mentioned in my article the importance of personal fit, of just kind of having that feeling like, you could be talking to the person who's got all the experience, great track record, all the credentials, and yet if the fit isn't right, it just can fall flat. And yet you might also talk to someone else who maybe doesn't have the perfect credentials, but the fit is great, and they're the person that's going to really help to move you along. Is there anything in particular you look at when you're thinking about fit, or is it just kind of a gut feeling?
Yeah, I know gut sounds a little bit fuzzy, like it's sort of, I don't know, it's hard to get to touch it and get your hands around it because it's not something that you see out there. But I think it is so important to use your gut. When I'm hiring a coach, I'm looking for somebody obviously somebody that's going to help get me to the next level, but I also, I'm looking for somebody who is invested in my success, that I get a feeling that they really want me to succeed. And it's not a case of just getting the money from me and then they don't really care if I get the results or not. And that's something I've gotten better at honing when it comes to having my radar out there. And today's example is perfect. This is a person who I got the sense is there he wants me to do well. And he said, Mark, I want you to do well because you know a ton of coaches and you know a lot of speakers and everything else, and you're going to refer me. when you do well and you get your results. So I know that may not be the best answer when it comes to gut. Talk about trusting your gut. It's hard to talk about gut and instinct. It's just something that you can. It's kind of like explaining what does the color red look like. Yeah. Or to say to a blind person or something like that, or it's tough to do, but that's the best way I would put it. It's the more decisions you have to make with hiring coaches, the better you're going to get at it. So the first few times you're going to be off a little bit, like I was. I made a couple bad hires, and I say it was expensive. It's not like it cost me tens of thousands of dollars, but it was $1,000 here and $500 there and $1,500 there. But that's education for you. That's the best education you can get.
Well, and I think part of the thing we've kind of beaten around this, but of when we're looking for a coach is connecting with someone who gives us a chance to actually do that before we have to make any commitments. So, have a first conversation or have some dialogue with before they say, sign on the line or hand over money, that they give us a chance. I'm of the belief, Mark, that a good coach wants you to feel comfortable having the right fit. And so they'll give you a chance to have that dialogue with them, have a first meeting, and for both of you to really figure out if that's going to be the right relationship.
Yeah. And gut goes the other way. As a coach, when it's not just a potential client that's interviewing me, I'm also really interviewing the potential client, because I don't want to run into a situation where somebody's hiring me and then I want their success more than they do. Yeah. And the old saying, can lead a horse to water. So if I start working with someone, and I've done this before where I'm like, oh my gosh, come on, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I'm just getting really kind of frustrated because I see what the person should be doing, but they're not doing it and they just don't want it bad enough. Then I'm not doing myself or the client any favors by continuing that relationship. So on the other hand, the client has to be motivated as well. The best client-coach relationship are the ones when both sides want that success equally bad. And there's that desire there. And it's almost like it's like Dancing with the Stars. I don't know if you watch that show or not. I'm a horrible dancer, but watching that show, the best tandems and pairs are the ones that have that chemistry, and you can tell they work well together. And it really has to be that way for a coach and client as well.
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I think that's a good motivator for anyone who has any hesitation to spend that time with a coach up front or to ask for time to have a first conversation, because really a good coach does want to spend that time too. And like you, Mark, I have absolutely turned people away in the past who've reached out to me for coaching in situations where I just did not feel like that was going to be successful, or like you said, I was going to care more about it than they really were in the long run. And so it really is valuable to the coach as well for that dialogue to happen up front.
Yeah, I have little tiny tricks that I can tell if a client is motivated, and it works most of the time. It's never a solid rule the whole time, but I mean, a perfect example is when I'm booking a first conversation with someone to see if it's going to be the right fit working together, and I send them to my online scheduler that I have, because I use one of those to keep everything straight with podcast interviews and client appointments, everything else. And if I see a person that's picking the very last available appointment for months down the road, or they say, I'm going away, I'll have to get back to you, or we're doing a lot right now with the house, we're doing renovations, I'll let you know, then I don't really chase that person too much, because right off the hop, I'm thinking this person doesn't seem to be terribly keen to want to start a coaching relationship. Now, on the other hand, when I'm working with someone who I could tell they're really keen because they're picking the first available time on that online scheduler, they can't wait for that call, they show up, you could tell they're taking notes and they're just really invested in it, then I'm thinking that would be an absolutely great client to work with, because right off the hop, they're already showing that motivation right from the beginning with booking the appointment quickly. So those are a few things I look for when I'm starting to potentially work with someone.
One other thing I'm curious about your perspective on, Mark, is, there's different schools of thought on this. As far as reaching out to someone, there's one school of thought amongst the industry out there that you should hire. It doesn't matter as much if your coach has the same professional experience of the area that you want coaching in. Like, for example, to use your example of doing a webinar of maybe someone who didn't have that much experience with it, but was really good as a coach and asking questions. And then there's another school of thought of, you want to hire someone who really has experience in your particular field, your industry, or the project you're hiring someone to do. What's your feeling on that, and how do you come down on as far as, when you look at professional experience and how valuable that is, or when you just look at the person's ability to be an effective coach?
Well, the best analogy I could probably give would be if, let's say, I'm a baseball player who wants to crack the minors and hopefully the major leagues, and I'm coming out of college, and I'm looking for someone to coach me with my baseball skills. The person that's coaching me doesn't have to necessarily have been Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle, and able to knock a ball 600 feet. But I do think that they have to have had some exposure to the game and know the difference between a bat, a ball, a stolen base, and some of those things as well, and be comfortable about it. So you notice, again, sticking with the whole baseball theme, some of the best hitting coaches in the major leagues. A lot of hitting coaches used to play. They had long, different lengths of careers, but some of the best hitting coaches and managers actually stunk as players. And it's funny when you look at them, or it maybe not stunk, but they certainly weren't, super players or all-stars. So I don't necessarily look for somebody that was that's a billionaire to coach me, because there's only so many billionaires out there. But it has to be somebody that knows where I want to go and knows how to get me there, at least. And there has to be that comfort level with whatever field I'm in. So I probably wouldn't have hired the person today if he had never done a webinar, but he actually had constructed his own webinar software before, and he's conducted hundreds himself, and I just knew he had that experience. So I hope that answers the question, but that's the best way I could put it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to look at it. Is there's not an always or never on anything, and I've certainly looked at that same thing. When I've hired coaches, it's generally been more for a specific project or something I'm currently working on, and I often do look to someone who's not, like you said, not necessarily the top in their field, but has had a lot more experience than I do, and will help me to navigate that path faster than I would on my own, because that's part of the benefit I get of working with someone like that. And then, of course, has the good coaching skills to be able to do that and to be able to ask me those solid questions.
Exactly.
Fabulous. Well, Marc, you know what? We're actually running low on time. I'm so glad that you came in and really educated us on this. Is there anything I haven't asked you that are things that you think about when hiring a coach that would be good parting advice for our audience when they're going out there and trying to think, okay, where's the place I want to start?
Well, you've hit on the major points, Dave. And again, I would refer the audience back to your blog post you have, because you had, I believe, 5 or 6 points in there that covered a lot of what I think people should be thinking about when they're actually hiring a coach. The number one most important thing you could do is listen to Natural Born Coaches every single day, and go to iTunes and rate and review and subscribe. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I think some of the things you mentioned there, like you had mentioned that you need a coach that can clarify where you are and determine where you want to go, and mapping from point A to point Z, and keeping you accountable. I mean, those are all great things. So I would one thing I would recommend when it comes to hiring a coach is not to be pressured into making a quick decision. And one pet peeve that I have, and I've faced it being on the receiving end of it, and I've heard coaches doing it, is there's this line that coaches use that they say, okay, do you want to hire me, Dave? And you say, well, I got to think about it. I got to talk it over with my wife. It's a big investment or whatever. And then the coach comes back and says, well, Dave, I only work with motivated action takers. So if you can't make the decision now, you're obviously not motivated, and I don't want to work with you. And a surprisingly large number of coaches use that type of strategy to try to pressure you into hiring them right on the spot, as if just because you're talking about large investment with your wife, then suddenly that makes you less motivated. And that's not my style. I'm just not that high pressure type guy. You know what? You want to talk it over? Great. Let me know when you're ready. And that's something that just really grinds my gears, like Peter Griffin says on Family Guy, when it comes to coaching industries, is that whole line. I don't like it. Just doesn't really, there's something about it just doesn't really jive with me.
Oh, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I've not gotten that ever before when hiring a coach or reaching out to coaches. But if I did, boy, that would make me want to run away.
At some point. I don't get it a lot. It's not like it's happening a lot, but it has happened. And it's been reasons why I specifically haven't hired that coach, because I've had the money to pay them. If they'd handled it right, they would have that money sent to PayPal and we would be starting our relationship tomorrow. But they said that, and it just something about that rubbed me the wrong way. So there's a way that you can encourage people to take action without insulting them. And I think, unfortunately, that way has a lot of times it can tend to insult the potential client, and it has the opposite effect.
Yeah, and that gets right back to what you said about just hiring the right fit and the gut feeling. And if something like that rubs you the wrong way, inevitably there's going to be other things in that relationship that are not going to work for you too. So,
yes.
I always think back to the honeymoon analogy of, everyone's on their best behavior in the first interaction and the first part of the relationship. And so if there's something that's not going well in the first conversation or two that's making you uncomfortable, that's definitely a red flag.
It's not getting any better.
No, exactly. It's only downhill from there.
That's another podcast. I've gone through a divorce, so we won't get into that. We'll save that for the next Coaching for Leaders.
Fair enough. Well, I'll add in one here too. And one of the things I just caution people to be aware of is someone who spends a lot of time trying to sell you on coaching. You have to have a coach because you have to have a coach, and spends a lot of time explaining what coaching is. I think the best coaches just do it and spend the time listening, like you said, and understanding, and then challenging you with some questions, and are invested in you. So yeah, be cautious if you hear too much about people selling you on coaching, because there's lots of great coaches out there, and most of them are just the ones who are great are just doing the coaching. And
yeah, if a coach says they've got one spot left and they need an answer by 10 o'clock tonight or whatever, not saying that that's not a possibility, but odds are that they probably have more than one spot, and you could get back to them within a few days, to think it over. I mean, that's life. You got to sometimes think of decisions. Now, that being said, you don't want to take 6 months or a year if you need the coaching now, but just use your judgment. Once again, the word of the day is gut or instinct, and use your gut.
Well, I'm sort of cracking up what you said earlier, because I was thinking as we were talking, one of the best ways people could actually find some coaches and investigate them is actually by looking through your show and the catalog. And you're doing a daily show that's for coaches. So if you're a coach and you're listening, you want to check out Natural Born Coaches. But even if you're not a coach and you're looking for a coach, that's a great way to get to know what coaches are out there, because Marc is interviewing a coach every day. So, and most of the people who are on your show are coaches, right, Marc?
Pretty much everybody. There's been the odd person that may be, say, a speaker, but they've got some value to give to coaches, and they may not necessarily define themselves as a coach. But if anyone's looking for a coach, we've had a wide range of niches or niches, I guess. I'm in Canada, so we call them niches. But we've got a wide range of people with different clientele and everything, and just all across the board. But if somebody's interested, take a look at the website and see, we've got upwards of 100 shows now that are in there. It's growing daily. Or somebody needs help and they just fire me off a message, hey, I'm looking for a coach that can help me do this, then odds are that's going to jog something in my memory. Hey, you should talk to so-and-so that was on episode number, whatever. This person would be great, and I'd be glad to connect them. I only work specifically with coaches, and that was a very deliberate thing that I do to keep my target market very defined. But odds are I could probably help you find the right person for whatever you're looking for.
Awesome. Well, I know Marc's very much a connector and loves serving people. So great. Check out his show first and take a look at the names there. And if you're looking for some direction, send him a note. And I'm always happy to help out too and make connections. I know both of us really love to connect people when we can, and just see great things happen as a result of those relationships. Hey, Marc, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking your time.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I had a lot of fun.
Me too. Hey, thanks, Marc, for sharing your wisdom and expertise. And I also really appreciate Marc being willing to share just some of his own experience in hiring a coach recently. So if you are interested in checking out the notes for the episode, go to coachingforleaders.com/179. And I'm also going to be putting there a few links to some of the coaches that I know and would recommend to you as starting points. 3 of those folks just off the top of my head that I think you should talk with if you're looking to hire particularly an executive coach. Tom Henschel, who's been on the show a couple of times, my friend who is the host of the Look and Sound of Leadership podcast. I've mentioned it before. It's a fabulous show. It airs once a month, and you can get it on iTunes or wherever you subscribe to this show. Tom, by trade, though, is an executive coach out here on the West Coast of the U.S. and is a fabulous coach, also has an extremely strong network. So if you're looking for a coach for your team or yourself, I would recommend getting in touch with Tom. So I'll put his link in the show notes as well. And another person to definitely check out is Bill Bliss, especially if you're on the East Coast of the States. Bill is out on the East Coast, does a lot of coaching out there, and has been on the show a couple of times as well, has a lot of wisdom, and also very well connected, so a great person for you to start with. His link will be there too. And then finally, outside the executive coaching category, if you're looking for someone just to help you to be more productive and actually look at your productivity really holistically of how you're setting goals and utilizing your time effectively, I can't think of a better resource for you than Tim Stringer. He's been on the show before, and I've mentioned his name in the past, a good friend of mine, and he is a wonderful resource for courses and coaching on holistic productivity and runs regular classes. So I'll be putting a link to him as well. So hopefully that'll get you started with a few resources too. And of course, Marc's show is a great resource as well. If you are a coach, definitely check it out. And if you are looking for a coach, it's another great resource. So again, it's called Natural Born Coaches. So all of that's at coachingforleaders.com/179. Wow. So go check those out for sure. And remember that the next Q&A show is coming up. It's going to be episode number 182. The topic for that show is going to be on presentation skills. So if you have a question on presentation skills, delivery, planning, content, design of visuals, slides, PowerPoint, Keynote, you name it, fair game for that episode. I hope you'll submit your question as soon as possible to coachingforleaders.com/feedback, and starting to have the good problem of not necessarily being able to always get to every question. So if you do have a question, get it in soon so we can consider it right away for that episode. By the way, while you're online, in fact, you don't even need to go online. You just pull out your smartphone. I hope that you will join my weekly leadership guide. The leadership guide gets delivered to your inbox each Wednesday and includes my thoughts and recommendations on the best articles, podcasts, videos, books, and other resources that will support your development between shows. And I really do look to find things that aren't just things you'd see everywhere. So it also includes a brief overview and link to the full weekly show notes. So if you're like me and listen on the go, it'll give you a really easy way to follow up during the week on the things that we mention in the show. So a big thank you to those of you who joined the Leadership Guide this past week. That includes Aaron Griffin, Christian Bruins, Jason Jagai, Teresa Casino, Teresa Fung, Cindy Fan, Darcy Heroy, Benita De Relega, hope I got that, Jay Bretz, Chuck Barker, Denise Noble, and Thomas Comroy. Thank you so much to all of you for joining the Weekly Leadership Guide. And as a special bonus, when you join the Weekly Leadership Guide, I mean, who doesn't like a bonus? You'll get immediate access to my guide on the 10 leadership books that will help you get better results from others. It's an 11-page reader's guide and a 9-minute video of my top leadership book recommendations, plus insight on the 2 books that I rely on weekly. Check that all out at coachingforleaders.com/subscribe. And it's a great way to get your reading plan started for the year if you haven't already. I saw a link today that said February is the month that dreams die, because everyone's forgotten about their New Year's resolutions. Don't let February be the month that your dreams die. I'm already ahead of schedule on my reading plan for the year. Almost about to finish my 3rd book. So I hope that you'll use this as inspiration as well. coachingforleaders.com/subscribe. Take care and see you next week.